exciting title. It's a long document. General Program Instructions version 5.0.0. Good to see you all today. We released a new version of our GPI this summer, and that's the topic of this talk. I will talk about the key changes, but before that, I will talk about the driving forces behind these changes. Our EPD system, like all EPD systems, are governed by lots of documents. And in the middle, we have the general program instructions, which are specific for each program operator. Above them, you have the sector-specific rules, and above them, you have the rules and standards that are applicable for all EPD programs. It's updated every 3 or 4 years, and this is then the 5th version. There are 4 aspects or 4 groups of rules in the GPI. The rules on the general operation of the program, rules on the EPD development and maintenance, which includes rules on the EPD content and the LCA method. There are also rules on EPD verification and on PCR development. Important to note is that not all rules come into force at the same time. So when I'm today going to present some changes in rules, that does not mean that all these changes are now in place. Rules on the operation of the program, EPD verification and PCR development, they are enforced within 3 months of the release in June, so they are now in force. But rules on the LCA method, for example, they are enforced as the PCR is updated to GPI 5. And this is a process that takes several years. But for construction products, we will release the updated PCR on construction products based on GPI 5 early next year. There are some key trends that have driven the changes in GPI 5. And these are compliance, harmonization, and digitization. I'm going to speak a little bit about these, especially the 2 first ones. The third one you have heard so much about already. And these trends are very closely related to the growth of EPDs. When I started at EPD International 2019, there were a few hundred EPDs registered in our system. And today we celebrated, a month ago, 10,000 EPDs. And it's just the beginning, of course. And so EPDs have moved in this time from being niche, something mainly for the front runners, the organizations here today, maybe, to become increasingly mainstream, especially in the construction sector, but also increasingly in other sectors. This means that also the use of EPDs have evolved from mainly a nice thing to have. Look at us, we have an EPD, we did an LCA. It's third-party verified, we are transparent. To moving more and more towards compliance. Compliance with market expectations and compliance with regulation. And this means that EPDs are increasingly used for decision makers. When there are 100 EPDs, there are not necessarily that many EPD products that you can compare that have the same function. But when you have 10,000 EPDs or 100,000 EPDs, comparability increases. And you can use EPDs in public procurement, for example. And what happens when people start to compare EPDs? They spot errors, sometimes. Inconsistencies, often, I would say. And this leads to the first topic. There are higher pressures on, yes, higher pressure. I want to stand there, you know. Okay, I will keep myself here. There are higher expectations on quality and compliance, and this we work a lot with, and this is reflected in GPI 5. And when I talk about compliance here, it's both compliance as a driving force, compliance with regulation, but also compliance that we need higher quality. We need EPDs that comply with the rules. So it's compliance in two ways here. Then it comes to harmonization. That's another thing that is driven by this fact that people start to use EPDs, compare EPDs. And here I talk about harmonization between product categories, but most importantly, harmonization across EPD programs. You should be able to compare an EPD in our system with one from EPD Norway or EBU or North American EPD, for example. And two main aspects of the LSA method has, for example, as expressed in ISC2024, has been open for interpretation. So each program has slightly different interpretations. There are also things that are not regulated in the standards, like mass balance, for example, as was mentioned. And therefore, there's a need for harmonization, both of interpretation of standards and setting rules that are not governed by standards. And that's why, for example, eco-platform is so important. But every time eco-platform sets a new rule, some program operators, like us, have to update our rules. And this is reflected in GPI 5. And so some of the rule-setting power has been moved from each program operator to higher levels, standards and eco-platform, for example, which is a very good thing, I think, in the long run. It increases usability. Yeah. Thumbs up. It increases usability of EPDs globally, and we start with eco-platform, but of course, our vision is one PCR for each sector globally. And in the short term, frequent updates because of harmonization can be annoying, we know. But the long term, as the rules mature, become stable, which is the aim, of course, with harmonization, the usability of EPDs and comparability increases enormously. Lastly, digitalization. We've already talked so much about it, but I can mention one thing that has evolved a lot in recent years are pre-verified tools, and this is reflected in the GPI. This is maybe the section in the GPI that has changed most. We have much more clearer rules and much more rules on pre-verification of tools. So, we are building a system not for 10,000 EPDs, but for 1 million EPDs, and that is what GPI 5 enables us to do, hopefully. And I'm going to talk about a few selected main changes in GPI 5, and this is how it looks. The front cover of this PDF document still. GPI 6, we will see. And there are physical copies that you can read. You can also go online and find it, of course. And I'm going to talk about 4 themes of changes. First, stricter rules on setting rules. So this is about governing ourselves. This is very important for improved compliance, predictability of rule changes, maintenance of pre-verified tools. If you have invested in a tool, you want predictability in rules and when they changed, and the transition periods of rules. It's also very good for EPD, for planning EPD projects. Some EPD projects can be very quick if you use a good tool, but it's still, some EPD projects take a year. So you want predictability that the rules are still valid when you publish and verified EPD. And the reminder is that rules are requirements, recommendations, and permissions. And as of GPI 5, rules shall only exist in the GPI. PCRs, one place at our website for indicators and characterization factors and some guidance related to that. And then in the normative standards or other normative references that we refer to in these documents. There shall no longer be any rule set, for example, in the FAQ or somewhere else. So this is, you must know where to find the rules. That's a good thing with GPI 5. Some more changes related to this topic is that we now have a clear separation into different types of updates of both the GPI and PCR. So they are large, medium, and small updates. And depending on what kind of change, there are different rules on whether it's a large, medium, small update and how transition periods and things like that are handled. Changes in requirements are in large updates only. That means if a version number changes from 3.1 to 3.2, that's a medium update, you will be able to compare EPDs still. But if the PCR is updated from version 3 to version 4, a large update, you may not be able to compare the EPDs. We want greater clarity on those things. As I said, clear rules on transition periods, and then also some strict rules on version management and archiving for updates. So if you have published an EPD for 5 years ago, you must be able to find the rules that were applicable at that time. So they don't disappear suddenly from cyberspace. They must be accessible. So this is one theme. Another theme is the EPD structure. We have a new and mandatory structure and headlines. If you go to an EPD today, they are structured in different ways, they are designed in different ways, the headlines are in different ways. It's not easy to use. And this is so important for machine readability, but also human readability, and making the EPDs useful for more. So, with the new structure, a user will know exactly where to find certain information. It will be great benefit also for EPD developers. They know where to put information, especially if they work in the EPD compiler. And also for verifiers, they know where to find the information. It will also be easy to check whether something is missing, of course. And of course, this new structure will be reflected 100% in the EPD compiler, which starts with the construction products, and then over time, more PCRs will be added. The EPD compiler will evolve, but we start with construction products. But even if there's no EPD compiler, and there's a PCR according to GPI 5, you will see this structure with the set headlines. Third theme of new changes in rules is the harmonization of LSA rules. Today, most EPDs are based on GPI 4, but they don't follow the LSA rules in GPI 4 because they follow ISC2024, which is quite different from GPI 4. So, GPI 5 is much more aligned with the construction products. The PCR, the standards, the eco-platform standards. One example from ISC2024 is the division of life cycle stages into A, B, C, and D. This is now the default for all other sectors as well. If a sector really don't want that, you can have an exception approved by our technical committee, but the default is now the same moving on for all sectors. This will, of course, increase modularity also of EPDs across sectors. Another example is the eco-platform standards, which have rules on mass balance, for example, but also electricity modeling, another aspect of the LSA method. They are now harmonized in the construction sector, and we bring those harmonized rules into other sectors with GPI 5 as well. So, modularity increases, but it also helps for EPD verifiers, EPD users, and EPD developers to understand the rules when they are more similar. If you're a verifier working with construction products and electronics, for example, or another product category, or textiles, you will recognize the rules to a much larger extent, which improves in the end the verification and the compliance and the quality of EPDs. A fourth and final topic are the increased amount of rules on pre-verified tools. So we have three types of pre-verified tools. They are now defined more clearly and associated with different rules. We have talked about pre-verified LSA tools, EPD tools, and integrated EPD tools. And for each type, there are new and clear rules on the scope of pre-verification, the maintenance of tools, updates of tools, the handling of non-compliance of tools, and the EPDs produced by the tools, etc. So I now hope you have got some flavor of the changes in GPI 5 and the driving force behind them. I have talked about stricter rules on setting rules, new rules and clearer rules on EPD structure, harmonization of LCA rules, and also rules on tools, especially pre-verified tools, so that we are prepared for 1 million EPDs. Not the next stakeholder conference, Sebastian, maybe, but 2028, maybe. With this, I say thank you for listening. Thanks for your attention.